Bon appetit! Hey guys, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm Ed Kimber, the boy who bakes, and I make new videos every Friday, so hit that subscribe button and click on the notification bell to be the first to find out when my new recipes are live. Now, if you saw my video a few weeks ago, you know that I love France. It's one of my happy places, one of the places that I escape to all the time. We were there to discover French food, modern French food, and get inspired by French ingredients. So that's what today's recipe is all about. I've taken ingredients from France and I'm going to turn it into an amazing recipe. I've taken a bunch of delicious French ingredients like aged Comte, Montbeiard sausages, and even mushrooms that are grown in caves just outside Paris, and I'm going to turn it into a fabulous quiche recipe. Also, if you want to win a trip to Paris, keep watching till the end of the video because I have an amazing competition for you. All the ingredients I'm using in today's recipe are from France, but are also available in the UK. So to start this recipe, you're going to need to make a short crust pastry, which is a pâte brisée in French. And basically, it's a really simple recipe, just using plain flour, salt, a little bit of sugar just to help caramelization and add a tiny bit of sweetness, and some really nice French unsalted butter, and that is it. So what you're going to do is take the flour, the sugar, and the salt, mix that together in a large bowl, and then either using your fingers or one of these, which is a pastry blender, you're going to add the butter in pieces into the butter, toss that together with the flour, and then pressing with the pastry blender, just cut that flour in until it resembles coarse cornmeal, and then you just want to finish it off with your hands just to make it look like a nice fine meal. The odd little piece is good because that helps with flakiness, but this one wants to be quite tender, so nice and blended in. Then we're going to take some ice cold water, and it's going to take between 3 and 4 tablespoons. So just have a nice bowl set next to you with a tablespoon, and then you can just drizzle in a tablespoon or so at a time, and then using a knife, bring that together. And when it starts forming these big clumps, you can then get your hands in and mix it together just briefly to bring it together into a uniform dough. We're now going to wrap that in cling film, put that in the fridge, and leave it for about an hour until we're ready to bake. So the first thing you're going to do is caramelize the onions. So just cut the top and tail, cut them in half, and take off the skin, and then we're just going to slice it into rounds. Now that we have sliced the onions, we're going to put them in a wide pan with a layer of oil, just a thin layer that cooks the bottom of the pan, and we're going to cook them over a low, medium heat until they're really nice and dark and caramelized. What you want to do after they've been cooking for about 5 minutes, sprinkle them with a little bit of salt. That will help bring out the moisture and help them really caramelize nicely. And then if you want to help it along a little bit extra, you can sprinkle it with a little bit of brown sugar. That's completely optional. I sometimes do it, sometimes don't, depends what I'm in the mood for. And just keep it moving every now and again, give it a good stir until it's beautifully caramelized. It takes quite a while for the onions to caramelize, and if you're worrying that they're sticking, just add a little bit of water. It'll help deglaze the pan, and you can just continue cooking until they're the really nice golden brown color. So once the onions are well on their way to being caramelized, we can add the sausage that we have diced and let those two meld together as they finish off cooking, and then we can set those aside, let those cool while we make the filling. Quiche is one of those classics that we all know and love, but this is a little different. My version is going to be using, instead of the traditional double cream, which makes for a delicious but maybe slightly heavy and rich quiche, it's going to use single cream and creme fraiche, which will lighten it up a little bit. And France is the capital of dairy, so we're using the best stuff. It will also be flavoured with Comte, which is a raw cow's milk cheese, which has been aged a minimum of 10 months. Cheese fact, France makes over 1,200 different cheeses, and almost 100 of those cheeses are protected under a different number of appellations, things like the PDO or the AOC scheme, which help protect the quality and provenance of French products. So if you're in the supermarket and you see a product with one of those labels, you know the quality is going to be good and it's a product unique to France. And then we'll also have a sausage from the same region as Comte, which is a Montbeiard sausage, which is slightly smoked and just really delicious. There will also be in there some caramelized onions and some Dijon mustard. So now that we have caramelized our onions and cooked off our sausage, it's time to make the rest of the filling. So what we're going to do is take our creme fraiche, add that to our bowl along with the mustard and the single cream. And then to that we're going to add our eggs, crack those in one at a time. And then we're going to add our cheese as well, along with a nice portion of pepper. Now remember, we salted the onions and there's also salt in the sausage, so we don't really need to add a lot of salt, if any at all, but a good amount of black pepper is great. Whisk that through. And the last thing we're gonna add is some finely chopped parsley, just to give it a bit of freshness and just add another dimension of flavor to the quiche. We can now set that aside whilst we work on the pastry. So take the piece of dough, the round of dough from the fridge, and on a lightly floured surface, you are going to roll it out until it's nice and thin and just wide enough so that it can fit about up the sides of a 9-inch springform pan. So the best way to do this is to roll kind of towards the edges and then turn it a quarter time each time. And that means it'll stay nice and round and is less likely to stick to the surface. And once it's rolled out, you're gonna carefully unroll it into the tin. And don't worry about if this doesn't look perfect. It doesn't matter too much. As long as you've got the sides and the base covered, don't worry about it, because we're gonna trim it down after it's baked. So especially the top parts, which are trickier to get nice and flush, don't worry about it at all. Once the tin is lined, we're gonna pop that in the freezer for about 5-10 minutes just to make the pastry nice and firm. And then take it out and then line it, the inside, either with crumpled parchment paper or a couple of layers of cling film. Fill that with rice or baking beans, and then we're gonna pop that in the oven that's preheated to 200 degrees Celsius for about 20 minutes. Then remove the filling, the rice or the baking beans, and then we're gonna leave it in the oven for about another 5-10 minutes until it's nice and golden on the inside. Then we can take it out, and we're gonna brush the inside with a beaten egg yolk. What that's gonna do is gonna help create a nice watertight seal so that the quiche doesn't end up with a soggy base. Then pop that back in the oven for about 1 to 2 minutes just to set that, bring it out, and then we're gonna turn the oven down to 150 degrees Celsius. Pour in the filling along with the caramelized onion and the sausage and bake that in the oven until it's got just a little bit of a wiggle and it's just starting to brown on top. So whilst the quiche is in the oven, we're gonna talk about the topping. So I am gonna be using some mushrooms that have been sauteed off in some butter and tossed with some freshly chopped parsley. So a quick mushroom fact for you. Today I'm using these mushrooms. These are Paris brown mushrooms. They are actually grown in caves just outside the city, and they're not dissimilar to butter mushrooms, but they have a slightly firmer texture, more concentrated flavor, and they are less watery. Now, these are grown in soil, so the bottoms sometimes have a little bit of earth on them, so just chop off the bottom, give them a little clean on top to get rid of any excess dirt, and then we're gonna slice them, saute them in butter and parsley. So once the quiche is out of the oven, we're just using a serrated knife just to trim off the excess of the pastry. Then we're gonna let it cool for about 10 minutes before taking off the collar of the springform pan. And then what we're gonna do is, obviously there's still a lot of excess pastry around the outside, and that's so that if it shrinks at all, we still get a nice deep quiche. So just use a knife just to gently trim away the excess and then leave that till it comes to room temperature to serve. Personally, I think quiche is way better room temperature, but it's up to you. If you like it cold, you can refrigerate it obviously, but I think it's way better room temperature. So to go with my French-inspired quiche, it seems appropriate to enjoy a glass of French wine. So this is a bottle of Sauvignon from the Loire Valley, which is also another product, another region that is protected in French food and culture. So that is how you make my French-inspired quiche, inspired by French ingredients and French modern cooking. Now, if you want the full recipe, you can click the link in the corner of the video. That will also show you full details of the competition. But the important part about that is, of course, the prize. And it's a weekend for two to Paris, and it's all about food. It will be an amazing weekend, and all you have to do to enter it is make a version of my quiche, post a picture to Instagram or Facebook using the hashtag BonAppetitUK. But for now, leave me a comment if there's anything else you want to see in an upcoming video. Bon appetit!